QuickBooks Pro Desktop 2021. How accounts are sorted with account numbers. Let's get into it with Intuit. QuickBooks Pro Desktop 2021. Here we are in our sample file. We currently have the open windows open. You can open the open windows by going to the view dropdown, selecting the open windows list. We're going to be opening up the chart of accounts by going to the view dropdown and the chart of accounts. We want to make sure the account numbers are on. You can turn the account numbers on and off by going to the edit dropdown, preferences at the bottom, accounting tab to the left, company preferences to the right. We currently have the account numbers checked off, so they will be turned on. We're going to say OK. There are our account numbers. Note that in the prior presentation, we talked about how to order the chart of accounts when there were no account numbers, which is kind of a precursor to this presentation. So if you haven't seen that, you want to take a look at that first. But the bottom line of it is that whether we have the account numbers on or off, is that it's going to primarily be ordered by type. The chart of accounts will primarily be ordered by type, which is basically balance sheet on top of the income statement, and then subcategorizations within that grouping: assets, liability, equity, income, and expense type of accounts. You can order by basically ordering by account number by clicking up top on the account number such as this. And notice, and you can switch the order from bottom to top, top to bottom. And notice if I go from top to bottom, it doesn't change the order that much when I have the account numbers. That's not because it's driven by account numbers. That's due to the fact that when the account numbers were set up, they were put in place subordinate to basically the account types. So when the account numbers were put in place, they grouped the account numbers. We grouped the account numbers to line up with the account type. So therefore, you want to think of it first as being lined up by account type, and then the account numbers fitting within it. Now, if there were no account numbers, it would still be ordered by account type, as we saw last time. And then within the sections of each type of account, it would be ordered by alphabetical order. So that's where the power is with the account numbers. Meaning, for example, with these three bank accounts, if we had no account numbers, it would then be ordered within that type of bank accounts by alphabetical order, possibly putting the petty cash then above the savings account. If we then turn on the account numbers, we have the power then within the banking items here to move this around, to be able to say now I can adjust whatever order I want with the use of the account numbers. Now you can kind of move away from that. It is possible to adjust things outside of the normal account number. In order to do that, I'm going to hit this little diamond that'll reset my chart of accounts to the default settings. I'm going to say reset. And then if I took this little diamond right here and I grabbed it, and I just grabbed it, left click, and I drag it up above the one to the top of it, I can actually move it out of order. If I see that on the financial statements, it should move it on the financials as well. So in other words, if I go to the reports dropdown, company and financial, and take a look at the balance sheet standard, changing the date to, I'll change it to 12/31/25, 12/31/25. Now we have the savings account before the checking account, and it's out of order in terms of the account number. So you do have the power to do that, but if you are doing that, if you have to do that, it obviously gets kind of confusing. It defeats the purpose of having the account numbers if your account numbers are now being dragged out of order. But just realize you do have the ability to do that. So if you're seeing your chart of accounts and you're saying, hey, it's out of order, maybe someone possibly just dragged this to be out of order for some reason. They might have had some reason to do it, so be careful about adjusting it. But you do have the ability to actually put the order of the accounts not in the order of the account numbers. You can physically move them in that way. But the general rule is now that it's going to be in order by type. Then we want to be setting up our account numbers within those types, so to fit within the order of the types, to give us more control over the ordering of the accounts within those account types. Now, if you combine that kind of control with like sub accounts down here, then you have a lot more control over what's going on, right? So now we've got two things to order our chart of accounts that we can exercise more control over. One being the sub account. So if I want to group a list of accounts, such as these payroll accounts, right next to or as a part of payroll liabilities, then I can make them subordinate sub accounts to the payroll liability. And I can also use the account numbers, which will line up and should line up closely to the payroll line item if I was going to set up a system to make sense. Then even within these payroll liability items, I might want to order these in some particular way as well. And then I have the power to do that with the use of account numbers. So now these sub items, there's a lot of them here. Instead of just having them ordered in alphabetical order, which might put something like the direct deposit liability up top or something like that, we can order them with the use of account numbers. This becomes very useful down here in the expense side of things, because oftentimes, depending on the type of industry we have, we might have many sub accounts. Like in this case, they're breaking out the automobile, and then they want to break out more detail for the auto, gas, insurance, repairs. That's perfect for the use of the sub accounts. Notice you could have done that strictly with account numbers, and if you, by basically having auto expense, maybe dash fuel, auto expense insurance, auto expense repairs. If you did it with account numbers and then lined up the account numbers next to each other and did not have a sub account, that could actually be a little bit easier in some cases, because notice that the sub account adds another line item to the financial statements. So you kind of have a choice as to whether you simply want to order your accounts, possibly fuel, insurance, like auto, and then repairs in order right next to each other with the account numbers. And then if you look at your financials, let's take a look at the reports drop down, company and financial, profit and loss standard, changing the dates from 01/01/25 to 12/31/25. Then if we look at, for example, the auto, if we remove the sub accounts, or if we have the sub accounts, notice it adds another line item and gives us that nice drop down. But maybe it also adds another account and increases substantially the size of the reports, because this whole another line here is adding size to the report, and you have a total. So every time you add a sub account, you end up adding a line here, and you end up adding a line for the total items. So it actually adds a lot to the financial and makes it quite a good deal longer. So you can not do that. You could decide that I just want to do it with account numbers, and you could say this is fuel for the automobile, insurance for the automobile, repairs and maintenance for the automobile, and then put them next to each other by account number. And then they're still like right next to each other. You won't have that nice subtotal. You won't have that nice collapsing feature, but you'll have a lesser list of accounts, a smaller list of accounts to deal with. Also note that if you go to like the chart of accounts, or like a trial balance report, go into the reports drop down. If we go to the accounting and taxes and take a look at a trial balance, changing the dates from 01/01/25, that's not a 5, 01/01/25 to 12/31/25. And then we scroll on down to the bottom here. All the sub accounts are basically indicated by this little colon. So you can see within the automobile, you've got 60100 automobile colon 60110 fuel. So really this account represents the fuel account 60110, which is a sub account of the account 60100. So notice that the trial balance is trying to basically condense these accounts down to basically one line item, so you don't have the sub account kind of breakout. And it can be a little bit confusing. The sub accounts can actually confuse things. If you're not used to QuickBooks, in other words, and you were to export this trial balance, you're going to be like, oh, well, now I have, is this account number 60100, or is it 60110? And what is it? Is the account called automobile? This, you got to kind of know the convention of the sub account. So I'm not saying you shouldn't use sub accounts for that reason, but it does add a good deal of confusion, and you have the decision as to whether or not you want to add the sub accounts or just exercise your control over the order of accounts with the use of the account number. So that's the basic layout of the account numbers. Now, if we go back to the chart of accounts, now then the question often is then, well, how do I know, what account number to use when we go into it? And we'll take a look at kind of a list of a chart. So we have a table here. The table is going to be by account type and then a range of account numbers. So we can start to think about where the account numbers would lie in terms of the range that it would fall in when we think about adding a new account. Where should that go in terms of the account number? So we'll talk more about that in a future presentation. We'll talk about kind of some problems that people have when they add account numbers and some issues that could cause problems, and then how to avoid those problems and or deal with them as they arise.